Hey, thanks for joining the conversation and welcome back to Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf. You know, the headline was talking about today, the headline was talking about the wheels on your car, right? Mag wheels, aluminum specifically, mag wheels have been a big popular customization feature since at least the 70s, maybe back into the 60s. Auto manufacturers are offering them as options. That wasn't always the case. I can remember back when that wasn't true. You had to buy them aftermarket and put them on yourself or have someone mount them. The thing is, aluminum isn't is somewhat of a recent innovation, especially metals, the alloys that are strong enough to be able to use for wheels and other things. That's not what I want to talk with you about today. And remember, this is live 21st century television, right? We're live and interactive. So watching for your comments, I want to hear your questions, your comments, your insights, what your experience has been as well. We want to talk about how this is relevant to you running your business, scaling your business in today's turbulent economy. But first, let's talk for a second about aluminum. Not necessarily really exciting um, topic unless you consider how aluminum as we know it today got started. So this what I'm going to share. Got a little show and tell for you here. So Paul Heroult and Charles Hall were the inventors of the current smelting process, or making it possible to get aluminum out of the ore that it's mined in. So it looked kind of like it was called silver clay back in the day in the 19th century. So in 1886, both of them independently on two different continents. Charles Heroult, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, and I apologize to our French-speaking friends for that. But Paul did it in France. He's a chemist in France that developed the process. Charles Hall was a student in the United States. So check this out. We talk about Silicon Valley, right? Companies like Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, Apple, starting in someone's garage. Well, check this out. 1886, Charles in Oberlin, Ohio. If you've heard of Oberlin College, it's still a relatively small college town in the state of Ohio. Developed the smelting process for making it economically viable to get aluminum out of the ore in his garage, working with his sister. He's a student, so he and his sister, she was helping him it just blows my mind. In the garage, in their parents' garage, are learning how to smelt aluminum and created a new process of both. It's now formally called the Heroult-Hall process and dates back to 1886. So that's 136 years ago. And one more thing about this, if you look at, and I'm going to share something else here with you. If you look at where that went, 2 years later, Charles co-founded a company that we know today as Alcoa. So, and here's a picture courtesy of Alcoa's website on their history. I highly recommend you go to alcoa.com for a lot more great history on how this developed. But here's a picture, of the garage where it all started for Alcoa and for Charles Hall and developing this process. Pretty amazing. Wouldn't have thought of something like smelting taking place, developing a smelting process would take place with a student and two kids, basically, brother and sister, working in their parents' garage. You just never know. Now, the point to all that is, well, wait a minute, let me come back. I got some notes I want to share with you, make sure I'm getting you the right information. So it's 136 years ago. Today, Alcoa is the sixth largest aluminum manufacturer in the world. In the early 20th century, they were the largest aluminum manufacturer. They grew to dominate the world. So think about this. This made the Heroult-Hall process made it economical to work with aluminum, because it was so hard to get aluminum, the metal itself, out of the ore that it was mined in. So in 1869, it's estimated there were 2 metric tons of aluminum manufactured globally. Now, to put that in perspective, in 1869, it's also estimated that about over 2,800 tons of silver was manufactured globally. So it's from 2 tons globally in 1869 to in 1890, over 450 tons coming from just one factory. So that was within 2 years of the Heroult-Hall process being developed. And in 1883, according to sciencehistory.org, it was estimated the aluminum was over $6 per pound, but by 1891, it was less than a dollar. So you can see the huge that's a game changer, right? Nearly an order of magnitude shift in the cost. So this efficiency was necessary for aluminum to become viable. Now, what has this got to do with you outside of the fact that a large part of your car, your wheels, a lot of the stuff that you use, likely major parts of the case for your cell phone uh, are made from aluminum, right? So it's become a very fundamental material in today's culture, in today's society globally, because there's so many things that are made out of aluminum. Wouldn't have been possible without this. The key was the efficiency, right? It's always about efficiency. In today's turbulent economy, it is necessary to really focus on efficiency because of inflation, because of supply chain problems, right? The other issues that drives efficiency to, it's always necessary in business, right? You want to bring stuff in, you ship stuff out, you make a profit. You get paid, you want to keep as much of what you get paid as possible to make a profit. It's part of the business. You provide value, you get paid well for it. Nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful thing. Now, how do you incentivize your team though to be focused on efficiency and honestly constantly looking for ways to increase the efficiency with the way things are getting done? How you measure the efficiency? One measure of efficiency is from the time, if you're running a manufacturing or assembly plant, from the time you bring raw materials in till the time you ship something out with an invoice to a customer, or actually it's received by the customer, right? So you've already bought from the time you pay for raw materials. Let's expand it even for the time you pay for raw materials to the time you invoice a customer. That's an efficiency measure in terms of how can you make that faster? How can you speed up the volume of money? How long does it take to get something through your building? How long does it take to resolve a customer service issue? How do you measure that? For your business, specifically for your business, you should have a couple, 2, 3 measures that are relevant to your business. And as always, measures are never perfect. That's not the point. You don't need them to be perfect. You just need them to be consistent. And they have to be accurate. They need to be, reality is your friend, right? It needs to reflect reality. You don't need it accurate to 2, 3 decimal points. You need it accurate to the level that you can keep track of the trend. So you're moving in the right, so are you moving in the right direction? How fast you're moving in the right direction? And you need a set of measures to make sure that you're not doing something that's going to decrease the value that your customer is paying you for, right? So the key there is what directly relates to delivering customer value. When I was in business school, we had the CEO of then CalFed Bank come in and talk to us, and he talked about how he had every manager in the entire company on a periodic basis had to map out every step, every process, every activity that was in their department, in their area of responsibility. And then he had to justify how that added value to the customer experience, to what the customers were paying for, what the customers were willing to pay them for, what they wanted and needed. Apply that within your business. Now, the justify may be a little bit harsh, but the thing is to sit down as a team and look at that and go, what really provides value, what doesn't? If you're going to find that there's 3 categories of things that you need to lead your teams focus on and guide them and innovate, in innovating on to either maximize or minimize. One of the 3 you want to maximize, the other 2 you want to minimize. Now, the first one is things that directly relate to creating customer value. What does your customer want? What is your customer willing to pay you for? Like, for example, say manufacturing cars, painting a shiny clear coat on top of the paint of a car, so it's a nice shiny appearance and has durability, right? You don't want to roll it off the showroom floor and have it look dull or beginning to peel, right? A couple months later, you want that to last a good 10 plus years. May not own the car that long, but you still want it to last, for a while. But that's not necessary to the function of the car. It is something that customers value and are willing to pay for. So spraying that on there, applying that clear coat is something that provides value. Just an example on that. Something that the second category, and this is something you want to minimize, right? So you want to maximize the things that provide value. Something you want to minimize is things that are necessary but don't directly deliver value. Now, excuse me, what does that mean? So it's like buying and using apps so that your team can more effectively collaborate from home, from remote locations, is something that's necessary that enables creating value, but it doesn't directly provide value, right? A customer is not willing to pay you to buy the apps and give them to you. They don't really care about that. That's not what they want from you, but it's something that's enabling your people to function in a way that they can create more value for a customer. Third thing, and this is something that definitely needs to be minimized and needs to be eliminated to the extent possible, is things that really don't provide any value to the customer at all and they aren't necessary. Now, that may seem obvious, but I've done a lot of analysis on a lot of companies looking at what we call, their value stream, the stuff that they do to deliver to customers. And there's always a lot of things that work their way into the process over time that aren't necessary, that don't provide any value, and that are an absolute waste of time and money. And sometimes that can be the result of, say, for technology changes. You go from a physical process to an electronic process, you digitize. And now something that had to be done in a physical space that doesn't need to be done in a digital space is still somehow baked into the process. It's either somebody still paid to do it in the physical world, or the digital process doesn't work the way that it should because there's things that were added in that weren't necessary. A better example on that would be paying for office space so that supervisors can watch people work to make sure they're not goofing around, so to make sure they're getting work done, and have people coming into that space every day. The great lockdown of 2020 showed a lot of companies that many positions that seemed like they needed to be done in a workspace together could be done remotely. And all of us were forced to experiment with that, during the great lockdown and to adapt to it. So why would you go back to having people come in? See, that's an issue. That's a management issue. If one of your team leaders can't function without having their people where they can see them, that's not going to work because you're paying for that leased space. Why lease extra space when you don't need it? That's just adding cost that you don't need. Now, coming together face to face on a periodic basis is very important for maintaining relationships and developing and maintaining high performing teams. Not every day, not all at the same time. Second caveat to that is some jobs, some functions just can't be done remotely. Coming back to manufacturing, you just simply can't bolt apart on a car. You can't put a wheel on a car. You can't change the tire on a car remote. Someone's got to physically be there, right? So it's understanding and you probably have that pretty well dialed in, right? And are continuing to innovate and dial that in. What absolutely needs to be done on site, what can be done remote, and eliminating all that extra space. I'm talking to large companies like TRW, which is now owned by Northrop. One of their campuses, they're converting a lot of their parking space, a significant amount of their parking space, to mixed use retail because they're never going to have those employees come back in to the office. And I've talked to other companies that are doing that. Can you do that? Not to convert the parking space, but how much of your physical space do you really need? If you own it outright, can you lease that out to somebody else that can use it? Right? We did that company turnaround that I helped to lead one of the things we did was end up subletting almost half of the square footage because they didn't need it anymore, and they weren't going to need it because they could scale. They had gotten so efficient and changed the way that they operated. It was an assembly plant that they would never need that extra space. And if for some reason they did, they could always reclaim it. They built that into the terms of their lease. So if you own the property, have somebody else pay for it, right? Lease it out to someone else, minimize your footprint, have your people working on that. And it comes back to, comment that I've got here that I don't want to miss. Sales organizations have been doing that for decades. They've been working in remote mode, right? And they found what is that rhythm where you need to have people come into the office, because this is a lesson I learned in the 90s, leading a remote, if you will. Didn't call it that at the time, but today we would call a remote team that was at different business units in different states for the company. And we had to come together every so often. In that case, once a quarter, we would come together for 2-day working session and spend that time working together, but also breaking bread at lunch and dinner, so that we got that social time, that connection time. Otherwise, the team didn't stay together. We didn't function as a high performing team like we could. And then we did remote meetings, excuse me, on a monthly basis. So there's some rhythm in there that works for your team based on what your specific mission is for that team. And with multiple teams in your company, some may need to meet a little bit more often than others. A consulting firm that I worked for, we minimized the footprint, had multiple offices. We minimized the footprint by minimizing the leased space, which was a huge cost. We minimized the leased space by making it okay for people to work from home. There were certain times that, we had company meetings, and there were certain times they needed to come and check in, but we didn't want them in the office all the time because we wanted them in the field, A, doing sales, or B, because they were either selling or delivering, both of which were helping the company, right? It was what we wanted to do as the company was scaling up. So consider those things. What's really providing direct value? What do you have to do but doesn't provide direct value? You need it. It's an enabler to providing direct value, and find the waste. What are the things that are actually wasteful, not doing anything? It's always surprising. It's always surprising. And it's usually a waste of time, a waste of money, or it is some sort of a research capacity resource. Like, the amount of code that can be written in programming, or the uptime for a machine in a factory process. So look at those. It's about efficiency. It's about innovation, because things like aluminum, right? And there's been a lot of innovation since the original smelting process that drives all the aluminum industry globally today was developed in 1886. There's been more innovations from that, but it is the constant innovation day by day. What if you can do a small thing every day that compounds? So thanks for being part of Wolf's Watch. Appreciate you being here, and it's always great talking with you. If you would, hit the like button where you're watching this, whether we distribute to, broadcast live to multiple platforms, but hit the like button. I certainly appreciate that. And, leave your comments. Got questions? Leave your questions. Got a topic you want to hear more about and chime in on? Let us know. Love to run it for you. Thanks for being part of Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and I will see you on the trail.